I think we can kickstart now since everyone is here. Stage is yours, Rahel.
Yeah, it's always very, very cool to see everyone joining from all corners of the world, even Hong Kong. We just saw that.
Yeah.
I will start with a quick introduction about XR Bootcamp, and then you can enjoy our lecturers of today. So I hope everyone can see the screen now.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I know you're already here today and you have probably seen the announcements of the XR Pro event series. And I would immediately like to invite you to our next one on 1st of February, which you can see it's with Ultrami Labs, with Benjamin, and he's going to speak about achieving PCVR quality for mobile headsets. So yeah, if you like today's lecture or if you're interested in that topic, feel free to register for that lecture on our Eventbrite page. Yeah, I mean, at XR Bootcamp, we did a last year review and we looked at all our students and where our students are basically today. And we did a small collections of cool job titles that our students have now. And it's super diverse from solutions engineer to software engineer to technical artists to creative developers and associate producers. There's all kinds of roles and really at very different companies as well, from founding their own XR studios. Some of our students are doing that, or working at very cool companies in XR positions at Meta, Amazon, Salesforce, and so on. And I would love to highlight actually 3 of our students, which is Sadiq, Michael, and Emma. And yeah, it's always cool to see how much career change you can do actually. And for Sadiq, I have to do a small note about him. He had a job offer to work as XR spatial engineer at Apple, but then he didn't want to move and he decided for a different position actually in Germany. So yeah, but he had the job offer after graduating from our bootcamp. So and we thought that was actually really cool. And Michael is working now at Meta through a sub company, and Emma, she was a digital artist before. She's now working as technical artist at Polyarc. And yeah, I mean, it was very cool to see that looking at the whole last year and starting into 23. And now actually we are going to start the first bootcamp of 2023, and I'm very excited to see what other careers we are going to see from our XR graduates. And yeah, I mean, what is actually our focus? So at XR Bootcamp, we're trying to really focus on educating our students skill to job. So we are always in constant communications with big XR studios, with big XR industry companies on what are the skills they actually need to adapt our curriculum. And what we learned is that programming skills are still very, very important. If you are an artist, if you're a designer, if you're a prototyper, if you're a programmer, of course, you need to know coding and you need to know programming. That's why our courses are partly programming heavy. And that's why also before you actually start our bootcamp, you need to pass a C# eligibility test. And that test that just proves not only the motivation that you really can and should definitely work in the XR industry, but of course it also tests your understanding of programming languages. And there is a free course you can take. Please feel free to enroll immediately to our free C# course. It takes around 40 hours to finish, but then you should actually be able to finish our test and to be eligible to start our 4-month-long bootcamp if you're interested. And yeah, and why do we actually believe that bootcamps are the way to go? Because I mean, of course, you can always self-learn, right? You can always watch lots of YouTube videos. You can go on Udemy. You can go on forums. You can definitely learn everything on your own. There is no questions. It's just that how do you actually know that the content that you're learning is the right content, that is the most current content, that is actually taught by people who know. Plus, and that's the most important, when you're in a cohort, when you're together with other students, you're actually accountable and you have to do homeworks. You have to work on your own projects. You're in a group together with other students. And I mean, Ferhan just came back from the and Daisy and Billy as well. They just come back from the hackathon, and it's always so cool to just develop projects together with other students who have the same interest like you. And that's for us, it's actually the same mindset in our bootcamp. You're always coding together, you're achieving projects together, and you're learning from each other and of course from our trainers. And yeah, and also like in the end of our bootcamp, we are always giving our students the opportunity to work with industry companies. And one of them, and we just announced that publicly, is Pearson. And Pearson wants to do virtual reality language learning apps and is interviewing our students. Our students are prototyping for them. And so that's giving our students the opportunity to really have real industry experience and really develop projects for a partner, for a big company, which looks awesome on your portfolio. And it's really a highlight of the course. So yeah, I already talked a little bit about our free C# course. Feel free to check that out on our website. And yeah, and also like I would love to invite you to our XR Creators Discord channel. We have over 4,000 members now. Obviously, it's free. You can ask any question you have about XR development. We are always sharing job offers we are hearing from, and yeah, and of course, like always sharing whatever we know and connecting people with each other. So it's a very cool forum to network with each other. And yeah, I mean, we have also like what's also very unique to XR Bootcamp, we have a lot of advanced level master classes where you already have to be developing XR for some time to be eligible to join. But the good thing about it is that big companies are usually sending their developers to join our classes. And then they're also looking at our graduates from the junior level bootcamp to see if they want to hire. So it's like a constant circle of hiring and educating people and talent. So we are very proud of that, to have like basically built this funnel of talent that gets directly hired by companies. And yeah, I would really like encourage you to check our Trustpilot site as well and read our feedback from our students. I think we have collected a lot, which shows that our students are very happy that they got the certificates, and especially also the portfolio that helps to distinguish them from other candidates. And yeah, so we really like we really handpick our trainers. So all our trainers are very successful on their own. They have either successful XR studios or working at very big studios, so that we can make sure that all our content that we're teaching is always current and is always the most important that you need to learn. Yeah, Ferhan, do you want to add something maybe?
Actually, all good. Thanks for quickly going over the courses. If you have any questions, feel free to reach us, or right after this open lecture, actually, we will have open day happening. Actually, in the same Zoom call, we will continue and then answer any questions with our trainers and graduates. So we would love to also welcome you there as well. Our team will share the Eventbrite link for that as well. But again, you will continue the session with us through this Zoom call. But without further ado, I would like to give the stage to Daisy and Billy. They have been working for months at Berkeley for creating such an interesting project and, let's say, research to maybe open up the next generation of UX pass-through possibilities. We got the chance to listen to Daisy a little bit at MIT, but we know that not everyone was at the hackathon. So we want to, based on huge demand, we wanted to actually create an online version of it to make sure that it is accessible to everyone. The good news of our XR Pro lectures, which we are doing the second one, the first one was about eye tracking. I recommend that you also check it out if you haven't seen that lecture. After the presentation, we will have roundtable experts from our trainers, pass-through experts. We also expect pass-through executives from Meta links as well after this presentation, like around 20-30 minutes. And of course, this roundtable will also include your questions as well. So feel free to contribute. This is really learning exchange forum, and we would love to get the best out of it. Usually we have 30 to 40 questions. We are trying to make all questions to be answered, no questions left behind. We will do our best. But let's first, of course, give the stage to Daisy and Billy. Welcome, Daisy. Welcome, Billy.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Exactly.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Daisy, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to share our project and talk about our lessons learned from Passthrough and designing for Passthrough. So today we're going to talk about how to create XR experiences with Passthrough, and I will start with giving a little bit introduction about my personal background. So I'm currently a recent graduate from Master of Design at Berkeley, and I work as interaction designer as well as human-computer interaction researcher, specifically with a focus on XR-related experience design. And I've done a lot of projects that builds collaboration tools using XR and also combine XR with other different interfaces such as AR or web communications.
Daisy, just to, I'm interfering, but on your right, there we are probably you are seeing the Zoom screen. Can you minimize it?
It's actually, I am sharing.
Okay.
It should be gone now.
Yeah, I mean, the top still, I hope that there's not so much on the top side, but now it looks good. Now it looks good. The bottom part is a little bit, again, maybe you can completely share screen.
Maybe we need to fold the like the video feed in order to show the slides. Yeah, that looks better now.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you make it a little bit
Yeah,
bottom.
a sec.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. So I will hand it to Billy to continue his intro.
Yeah, so my name is Billy. So I'm a design prototyper and creative technologist. And in the past, I've been working across AR, MR, various other emerging technologies field like tangible UI or AI ML or visualization. I also work a little bit on speculative design as well. So for today's workshop, we'll mainly talk about pass-through in mixed reality. So when we talk about mixed reality and pass-through, a lot of people immediately think about a live video feed in which is kind of similar to their the phone camera app. But if you put your phone in front of your eyes and look at it, does it also mean that it is pass-through? Technically, yes, but also there actually something much more, like there are many more features required in order to create very engaging pass-through experience. So basically, when you think about creating engaging pass-through experience, what you need is not only a live video feed, but also with other stuff like scene and understanding in order to create a more granular blending between the physical and virtual world. So it's an interesting time right now because HTC Vive just released their latest headset that has a depth sensor in it that enable even better depth sensing in their mixed reality experience. But even when you look at existing generation headsets, they already support color pass-through, and even the last generation one, they already support grayscale pass-through. So there has been a pretty wide range of headsets that support pass-through already. But just to be careful that when you design pass-through apps, you're actually designing experience for such a wide range of devices with different level of pass-through capabilities. So in today's workshop, we will cover mainly these four topics. So first of all, Daisy will talk about different blending and interaction patterns for pass-through. And also she will follow up by giving some UX design tips for Passthrough. And then I will take over and talk about some of the development tips for Passthrough, as well as sharing some resources that will be useful for designing Passthrough experience and also finding different inspirations.
Sorry for interfering again. I saw that some people are posting questions to the chat. Please use the Q&A tab, because we will expect a lot of questions, and it will be easy for our speakers to look at the questions. So feel free to already start submitting your question in the Q&A tab, so we can already use that questions for the Q&A session. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Billy, for the intro. And then I would like to start with talking about the interaction patterns that we found in current applications that started to use Passthrough. So the first type of usage is to use Passthrough as a background, or some of the applications call it the AR mode. For example, you can find that in some of the architecture applications, such as Archeo or World. They basically allows the user to turn on the pass-through and then put the 3D models in their home as the background. Or you can also see that in design prototyping tools such as Shapes XR, and you can use that to prototype mixed reality interface. And that allows you to have a preview on how that will look like when the user uses that with the pass-through. Besides that, some games also started to use the pass-through as an alternative mode. For example, in Cubism, which is a single user experience, they integrate this pass-through background. So it looks like you're playing this game on your desk. And they also have some design details, such as the shadow of the cubes rendered with the correction, and so that this virtual parts can be integrated better with the physical environment here. And also you can find this pass-through mode in some of the multiplayer demo, such as one developed by Unity Labs. In addition to showing this pass-through, they also add this capability that allows the user to change between a fully immersive VR mode and a pass-through mode. So the capability to transition between different modes is another kind of unique point of this demo and pass-through capability. The second part of the pattern is using pass-through as portal. So speaking of portal, we usually think about movies or animations with portals that connects to road. And similarly, in the use case of pass-through, when they use pass-through as a portal, the two roles often refers to the virtual and the physical layers. So sometimes that pass-through is combined with digital twins. And for example, in some of the cases, pass-through is used to reveal hidden physical role through the interaction, or it may go vice versa, which means the user can use pass-through to reveal the hidden virtual contents in the room with their controller or their head movement. So if you go to next slide, which shows the World Beyond demo, basically when the user moves their controller around the room, at some point they will be able to find this little creature hiding in their room and starts other interactions for the next step. The next type of the pattern is using pass-through as a theater. So what I mean is with the pass-through and spatial anchor, the user can use the room to, it's kind of like viewing a 360 VR feed on your wall. And with some other interaction options, the user can choose which wall they want to display this video. For example, similar things can also be found on the World Beyond demo. When the user click on the trigger of their controller, they can turn the wall into this mystery virtual world. And some other projects done by Passthrough Studio also share this similar idea. And there's another hackathon also a hackathon project, which turns the user's room into a star field, and that integrates this star field and their ceiling as well as door very well in this example. The next type is turning Passthrough as a playground. So that means adding more interactivity between the virtual contents and the player. So for example, one of the game turn the Passthrough, turn your room into a escape game. And then you need to figure out ways in order to get out and see a room. You also kind of need to kind of play with the virtual objects or kind of attack some enemies in order to get into next level. Similarly, there's another roller coaster game which utilizes some kind of object detection of your physical environment, so that at some points, this roller coaster will hit something in your room, and that kind of connect this virtual and physical parts. Another laser wave or laser dance demo by Thomas also shared this idea of adding more interactivity to the virtual and the physical environments. And they also have this to be procedural, so there will be different levels as the user proceed in this game. So to combining all these different patterns together, from the designer's perspective, these patterns cover multiple levels of interactivity and can serve different purposes. For example, for the pass-through background pattern, the pass-through background may help people to get a better sense of scale. And for the portal part is the asymmetry of information that brings surprise to the user. And then going to the theater part, it can help the user to create this extended perception of their room. And moving on to the playground, it allows more interaction between the virtual content and the physical world, making them truly connected with each other. Therefore, the question for designer when using pass-through is how might we utilize those pass-through patterns and combine them to design more creative interactions and experiences. And for the other part, which is the developer part, is more about how can they get more contextual information so that the virtual and the physical part can be connected better together. And here we list different complementary techniques that may require for different pass-through pattern, ranging from the plane detection, the scene understanding, or the spatial anchors, as well as some rendering considerations such as the occlusion and the shadows. We will be covering that later in details in the following sessions. And next, I will want to talk about the toolkits that Billy and I have been working on called Liminal. Basically, we've started from some basic interactions that people can use with pass-through. So if you move on to next slides, this is a concept sketch of our toolkits. Basically, we provide different options for user, and we want to see how people would like to use these options to customize their workspace. We mainly cover 3 different types of pass-through interactions that cover different like manual control or automated control, as well as different time duration of the pass-through. The first type of interaction is pre-configured pass-through. So that's basically a brush or shape, as you can see here, that allows the user to choose which area they want to see as the pass-through. Another type of pre-configured pass-through is using the opacity adjustment. So you can either adjust the opacity of the full environments or adjust the opacity of specific objects, such as your desk or your window. Say, I just want to see my actual desk when I'm in VR, and you can do that with the object fading interaction. And the second type is the responsive pass-through. Basically, the pass-through will be updated to follow the user's movement. For example, as they look around, the sites in front of them will be shown with this headlight interaction, or it's kind of like you attach a flashlight to your hand, and whenever you point to will be shown with the physical world view. And in addition to that, we also investigate how can we better integrate the pass-through with context awareness, meaning that how can we let the system know what the user is doing, and the system can become more smart and help them to trigger the pass-through when they notice the user is doing something else. For example, when I'm doing something in VR and at some moment I want to take a break from the work. So what this context pass-through did is when the user stands up and want to stretch a little bit, the pass-through will, the system will toggle on this global pass-through for them. So in front of them, they will see the room with the opacity change. Or another case is sometimes when you're fully in VR, at some point you may want to grab your coffee or look for something on your desk. And when the system senses that, it will automatically toggle on this headlight pass-through so that only the part that the user is looking at will be shown with the physical world. The third type is, say, there are someone who wants to talk with you when you're in VR. And once the system detects that, it will trigger the opacity change of your door. So through this context-aware pass-through interaction, we want to explore some initial step into integrating pass-through with the real-world activity. And once we figure out a way to gather more contextual information, it will unlock more interaction as well as the potentials for the experiences. And let's say I have a rough experience of what pass-through can do, and right now I want to start actually designing or prototyping the UX, like the experiences with pass-through. Here are some tips for you to consider about. So firstly is the affordances, meaning that we talk a lot about how to connect the virtual and the physical parts, and that's also a part of the consideration for UX design. We want the virtual content to look realistic and integrate with the real world well. So that includes some rendering for the occlusion and shadows correctly, as well as the consideration of size matching between the virtual and physical objects. Also, since we have multiple layers, in some cases, it doesn't mean the more layers we have, the better the experience will be. So especially when playing with that opacity feature, from the user testing of our project, we find that when there are multiple layers with different opacity options, people sometimes find it confusing for them because they cannot tell like what exactly is the primary layer. So that's something to be aware of. And also sometimes it could be useful to actually have a clear mark between the virtual and the physical parts. And lastly, when designing for different contexts and modes, we need to be aware of different room setups, especially when we want to develop something that's specifically attached to some objects in the room. And also, although we are talking a lot about designing prototypes or applications specifically using the pass-through, in some of the cases, it's more like integrating this pass-through mode to the existing applications. So it's more like a question for the designers to think about how can you balance the interaction between different modes while also utilizing all this advantage of the pass-through. So let's say now the designer mock up the experiences, and how can the developer actually make sure all these visions are visible? I will now hand it over to Billy for more tips for the development part.
Thanks, Daisy. So in this part, I will share more about how developers can prototype or even build real-world XR apps using different techniques, and also how I personally tackle different challenges when I was developing pass-through apps. So usually the first step that you do when you try to create a pass-through app is to add this OVR pass-through layer to one of the OVR camera rig component. And this basically add a pass-through layer behind everything else. And one challenges that we faced initially was related to the performance of pass-through. So we actually found out that it is always best to use only one pass-through layer and use different shaders to review the content of the pass-through layer instead of creating multiple pass-through layer, because that would create different additional and duplicated computation on the Unity engine. But there are certain cases that you might need to use multiple pass-through layers. For example, you might want to have different styling applied to different pass-through content, or you might want to say have edge highlighting effect on one of the pass-through content, but not the other. In that case, you might need to use multiple layers. But in general, I personally avoid having multiple layer as like having it as few as possible in order to have a better performance. So overall, developing for pass-through is a little bit like creating a scrapbook. It's like because you actually don't have access to the raw pixel of the camera feed. So usually, just like creating a scrapbook, you're basically cutting off different part of the photos or newspaper or anything and try to paste it into the canvas. And the same applies to pass-through, which is basically you control how much of the pass-through layer is shown to the user. And the way that you do that is through shader. And so actually to create this is a very simple example of a pass-through shader. And the rationale, the principle behind it is actually very simple. So basically, in the fragment shader, you need to specify how much of the opacity you want to show for this given fragment or pixel. And in the blend up line, you basically need to specify a correct blending operation that would make sure that the opacity is always overriding anything behind it. So in this case, we are using min as the blending operation, because like it will always make sure that the pass-through shader is overriding all the content behind it. So it's literally like punching a hole in the whole scene to reveal the pass-through layer underneath. So two of the common shaders that we use in our prototypes are this blendable lit shader and also another one called masked pass-through shader. So the blendable lit shader is basically a modified version of the lit shader, but with a pass-through image applied on top of it. So actually you can use any other shader, not just only lit shader, but the rationale behind it is to turn any existing object into a pass-through object. But for the second type of shader, the masked pass-through shader, it is more suitable for new standalone pass-through content. For example, if you're creating like a pass-through shape or pass-through stroke that we mentioned before, masked pass-through would be a better choice, because it would allow you to make sure that the opacity of the object is independent of other content. And also in this shader, we also implemented a masking mechanism so that the edges along the pass-through cutout is soft. So there's a little bit of gradient transiting from full transparency into full opacity. So you can see that this is the example of the masked pass-through shader. And this is the blendable lit shader that we use. So another challenge that we face is that when creating pass-through app in Unity specifically, if the Unity scene itself has a non-empty skybox, there are certain settings you need to do in order for the blendable material to be working. So it is because Unity always rendered the rendering the skybox after all the opaque objects in a specific position in the render queue. So initially, when we created all these blendable materials, we actually all the blendable materials actually did not reveal the pass-through layer, but just the skybox. So only after correctly adjusting the ordering in the render queue, we were able to manage to show the pass-through layer correctly. So make sure that you pay attention to the render queue position if you are not using an empty skybox. And also another challenge that we faced during the prototyping process is when we use the room mapping API. So this API allows you to map different 3D model into furnitures or object in the real world. So when you do the actual mapping, there's actually a resizing step needed because the 3D model may not be in the correct dimensions or in the correct aspect ratio as the real furnitures. So it's actually quite easy for, say, some uniform objects like cube or plane to be resized. You can basically just apply a simple 3D scaling or even 2D scaling. And it becomes a little bit more complicated for symmetrical objects like a desk or a couch, the two models that's shown on the right, because you cannot uniformly scale up this two types of object. Otherwise, the leg of the table would be also getting thicker as you scale it up. So for these, you actually need to implement a little bit of custom scaling by writing some customized algorithm. So, but actually, even in the Oculus SDK integration package, there's a example of this scaling algorithm. You can refer to this simple resizer.cs file. This actually helped us a lot when we try to implement the room mapping features, because actually the scaling logic is not always easy to get it right in the first time. So I highly recommend you to check out this specific example for scaling. And for more asymmetrical object, it is actually quite hard to scale it naturally. Say what if there's like a random blob of 3D model, it will be actually quite hard to scale it correctly using simple scaling. And for those, you may need to perhaps think about having an alternative geometry, or if you do know how to scale up that specific shape, you can also implement a custom algorithm for resizing it. And then another challenge that we face is about the occlusion, because currently there's actually quite limited amount. There's no actual object detection mechanism in the Passthrough API and also the scene understanding features. So what it means is that the more objects that you map manually, the less occlusion issue you will see. So in this example, like we map out the desk, but we didn't map out the computer on the desk. So when we try to apply pass-through shader into this desk object, the computer is still hidden by the wall, which is not normally occur in the real world. So basically, the only way to solve this kind of occlusion problem is to encourage the user to map out more objects in the scene, or having some possibly storytelling device that could kind of help you explain why this happened to the user in the gameplay. And related to that, the built-in support, the built-in types of furniture supported by the SDK is actually quite limited. So currently there's only couch, desk, door, window, and also walls. So for all of the other types of objects, it's kind of fallen into this other category that doesn't have a way for you to distinguish among them. So when you build a Passthrough app and you want to have the capability of recognizing other objects in the scene, you will need to ask the user to label all these other objects themselves, which kind of increased the initial setup in the experience. And also other challenges when we use spatial anchors also include, say, all the processes pretty manual. So the user can usually need to do a lot of manual setup before even beginning the experience. And also sometimes the accuracy of the depth sensing and the stability of the anchoring is not really is not high. So make sure that you have encourage the users to have enough lighting when they first set up the scene, so that the device is able to sample the real world with more accurate samples. And also, there's actually some certain limits of on the number of walls and objects. So as soon as you go past this limit, the device will not allow the users to create any more walls or objects anymore. And also at the eventually at a certain point, you will kind of run out of the number of spatial anchors when you have more objects, and that would create also some performance overhead to your apps. So make sure that you don't create too many spatial anchor in the apps. Otherwise, it would also slows down your app experience. And finally, compared to other VR capabilities, it's actually a little bit harder to test Passthrough because the Unity editor cannot display Passthrough. It does not have any data that is available for Passthrough. So actually, there's no perfect way to test Passthrough other than actually wearing the headset yourself. And finally, we want to share some resources to you to help you, first of all, get more inspiration on what kind of Passthrough content or experience you want to create, and also help you understand more about the Passthrough API. So first of all, some prototyping tools for low fidelity prototype, Shapes XR. I'm sure many of you should have known this already. But also there's another tool called Bezel, which allow you to create 3D model on your computer, but you can actually preview the model in Passthrough as well when you access this app on the browser on your Quest or other VR headset. And also for development resources, there's a very informative blog called Immersive Insiders, which contain a lot of tutorials about Passthrough. Also, Dilmer's YouTube channel also contain a lot of very helpful videos about Passthrough. And finally, the World Beyond example that we talk about from Meta is also a very good source for checking out how a kind of production level app is using Passthrough API. And also, if you want to learn more about the scene anchor or even the newer version of it called Share Spatial Anchor, you can check out the official Oculus documentation. Also, these are some documentations about the mixed reality design guidelines and also the Passthrough API itself. And finally, we want to share some source for inspirations as well. So Great Madison from Unity Lab has a very interesting YouTube channel where he posts a lot of video about different Passthrough experiments. And also Thomas also regularly share some interesting Passthrough experiment on Twitter. And on Twitter, when you search for the hashtag Passthrough, you can also get a lot of interesting pass-through demos created by different creators online. Also, hashtag Shapes XR on LinkedIn as well. And finally, you can also go to SideQuest and search for pass-through tag, and they will also list out a list of interesting pass-through apps to you. And yeah, so that's all for our presentation and sharing. So we would love to hear any question from you, or let's have a discussion as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Daisy. For now, I think we can maybe start the roundtable discussion as well. In the meantime, I will already start with one question that just to at least have a better understanding. So what are the most in-demand use cases and projects that you are seeing right now? Maybe you can quickly share. I mean, you already listed, but in your opinion, when we look at 2023 and ahead, for Quest, Links, and any other HTC Vive and any other platforms, what kind of games plus use cases or apps that you are expecting using the full capabilities of Passthrough?
I think each of us can give an answer. For me personally, I'm really looking forward to more open access to the camera feed, because once that is available, there will be much more computer vision related experiment done by different computer scientists or creators. So I've seen someone already trying to use stable diffusion to do some kind of diminished reality experiment. So basically in that demo, like the person tried to hide different content in the reality by kind of feeding the pass-through images into a machine learning model, and then it kind of removes certain objects and output the video feed frame back to the device and display to the user. So all these kind of interesting computer vision or machine learning enabled pass-through experience would be something that I'm really looking into. But currently, I think only Links Enterprise Edition support raw access to pass-through feed. So I think when different pass-through like MR device provider figure out how to provide raw access to pass-through feed without violating privacy, it will be there will be way more interesting use cases and experiment in the on the internet.
Perfect. Anything to add on your side, Daisy, from a designer perspective, especially?
I would say, like, from my personal opinion, I think applications that can take contextual information will be more engaging for the user. For example, during our user test, one participant actually mentioned they would like to see the pass-through can actually kind of record their activity in a sense, and kind of reminds them of what is happening in real world, and bring that notification back to the virtual world. Say, for example, I'm in VR for 3 hours and I kind of want to be aware of that. And if the system can send me some kind of notification that are interesting, it will kind of improve their experiences. So I would say, like, context awareness is definitely an interesting point, and also adds to the experience as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I'm slowly adding up our experts for the roundtable. So for the remaining time of the session, what we will do is we will actually take the perspective from different experts. We have people from different platforms as well, who worked on Meta, Links and different platforms, and have already XR design and development experience. Some of them are also our trainers and graduates. So I would like to give the stage to our roundtable experts. Maybe we cannot do a quick intro, but while you are asking or sharing, maybe you can already share your background or your current interest, why you have an interest towards Passthrough XR. Chris is with us. He already gone through all these AR related paradigm at Meta. So Chris, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Good,
Yeah,
good.
just a quick background. I used to work at Meta as a prototyping manager on the AR glasses. And yeah, the biggest interest for me for Passthrough is that it's a really massive stepping stone and into AR, into the future. So all the tools that you'll use with Passthrough with VR are going to be more applicable with AR later on. So it's like getting a head start on all these wonderful experiences.
Perfect. Anything specific that you would like to share, like in terms of Passthrough apps or games? What is your like a future prediction that what kind of experiences that we will benefit from Passthrough most?
I honestly think co-located experiences are going to be pretty big in the future. The shared spatial anchors just came out just a little while ago, and I think having that pass-through mode and being able to experience these things in person with friends is going to become more popular as headsets become cheaper and more people have them.
Perfect, definitely. Actually, co-location is also our focus of 2023 in addition to Passthrough. So we are looking for speakers and experts on co-location to actually invite. I'm sure that we will announce in a couple of months that co-location focused open lecture. Hugh is with us. He's actually a graduate from one of our advanced classes, and now he's also working at Lynx, the exact heart of Passthrough. How's everything? I hope Passthrough related projects are going well. We cannot hear you yet, but while you are fixing the sound, I'd like to welcome Ian, our mentor and trainer for our bootcamp. Hey Ian, we have been together for a while for the MIT hackathon, so I hope you are recovering from the hackathon.
Yes. Hi, good to be back. Yeah, we're freshly back from MIT Reality Hackathon. We just had a lot of people there working on Passthrough and mixed reality applications, especially considering all the different devices that have just released. So people are getting hands-on with Quest Pro. They were working with the new HTC Elite device, and there was a big focus on trying to, especially as VR technology, VR headsets and AR headsets for a while have been a little bit separate, and it's been fun watching the industry kind of come in unison together as we get closer and closer together. They're sharing a lot of the same abilities, and then also like the Lynx headset was there as well, and that is like a mixed reality first device, enabling you to both do immersive presence experiences and also immersive virtual experience.
Exactly, perfect. So since Daisy was there as well, I'd like to ask maybe quickly, what is the general tendency right now, hackers, in terms of hackers who would like to tap into Passthrough? Have you seen any kind of like a common or typical use cases at the hackathon, since they probably have tried first time Passthrough? Daisy, anything you would like to share from the hackathon?
So like from hackathon experience, I was probably like mainly work on my own project, but actually our group tried using Passthrough for our prototype. And from what I see is like, I saw some people who came to our workshop interested in using Passthrough, and one challenge for them is how to kind of quickly get hands-on with the pass-through, and also use that for so another consideration they have is like how easy it is for them to use pass-through for the demo, because during our judging stage is actually like we probably need to like move to different places, and the spatial feature with the pass-through, like how can you actually show that during the presentation, is some considerations that we've discussed. So yeah, I think I've seen a lot of like interesting applications using pass-through. But like right now on top of my mind, I don't have a specific like project in mind that I can talk about, but definitely from our pass-through workshop, we can see a lot of people interested in using that for their prototypes.
In my opinion, the productivity and workspace related apps might be interesting. I think your group's project was also interesting. As far as I know, it was like you are bringing the image from phone and then sliding into the directly to the pass-through virtual space, right? As far as I remember. Perfect. Perfect, great. So let's, we have already a lot of questions. I don't want to take the time so much, but we can always continue the discussion and chime in. Feel free to answer each of our experts. Feel free to answer whenever you see a question that you may add contribution. So we have a question. As far as I know, the Vive Elite has no stereo. Also, the Pico 4 hasn't. I think using pass-through without stereo view doesn't really work, at least for me. How do you guys think about that? Nico asked this question. Actually, let me invite Nico as well. He has a very interesting project, so he can also maybe join the conversation. Anyone who'd like to answer this or who have already gone through this Vive Elite and Pico 4? I think he wanted to speak, but I think we cannot hear him right now. Chris, have you got the chance to look at the Pico's pass-through or?
No, I haven't. I've been slowly working through all the various other headsets and things. I've been pretty meta focused for quite a while. So,
okay. By the way, Nico is with us. Nico also has a very interesting project. Maybe would you like to quickly introduce yourself, Nico?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I'm not sure if you can hear me. Yeah, cool. Hi, yeah, I'm Nico. I'm from Berlin, and I'm working on the
Okay, we lost you. I don't know. We cannot hear you right now. Let's go back to that question then. Maybe in a few minutes. I would like to continue with another question. Can you use spatial anchors for Quest 1 and 2? I think that's a yes, right? Anyone has any, like, is there any difference between Anchor SDK of each Quest 1, Quest 2, or Quest Pro? Have you seen any difference?
To my knowledge, maybe if other people want to join in as well, it's the spatial anchors, like being able to mark where your desk is located, is available on both the Quest 2 and also on the Quest Pro. They have a new feature that's coming out, which is shared spatial anchors, which allows the two devices to have the same spatial anchor, and that is only available on the Quest Pro for now. But I would also confirm with other experts here.
I have received a hint that it will also come to Quest 2, maybe in the next few days. Just a hint. I would not like confirm or deny, but yeah, I would definitely say that it will come to Quest 2. So shared anchors will be more, let's say, accessible for everyone. Chris, anything you would like to add there?
I would just say, like, technically speaking, it's very possible on the Quest 2. It's just probably a matter of like Meta making the decision to not push pass-through as much on a black and white pass-through versus like people recording on a Quest Pro. It's just going to look better. So that might just be more marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, one key takeaway that I have received from the hackathon is compared to other headsets or platforms, you cannot record your pass-through. I mean, there are also, of course, privacy and other issues that I think we shouldn't go so much deep into that because it's not so much technical. But what is your take on that? What is the like potential limitation that I may have as a developer when I don't have access to the camera feed?
I'm kind of surprised by that. I think you should be able to record on the Quest Pro. I'm not sure. It was just a limitation for a little while.
I think so. I don't know. I have heard this a few, let's say, complaints that due to privacy reasons that you cannot feed. Actually, one of our students also has said the same thing, but maybe if anyone knows better, feel free to chime in.
I think only in the latest version of the SDK, they start supporting screen recording that include pass-through. Maybe some participants didn't upgrade their headset to the latest version of the system.
Okay, you should have been the mentor inside the hackathon. Okay, Berenice would like to talk. I think Berenice is our recent graduate. She did a lot of pass-through related stuff. Berenice, you were also saying something, right? Can you quickly explain what was your challenge there?
Yes, of course. Although I'm from Germany. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the session today. So I worked on a project with Passthrough, and I mapped out the room as it's similar to the Beyond the World sample we had seen. But on my Quest 2, it wasn't possible to record the camera feed. And I also want to ask the experts today how you work around the fact that it's not possible to access the live camera feed, so that we can run computer algorithms and computer vision algorithms, for example, to do some deep learning stuff and something like that, or just a kind of filter. A Sobel filter, for example. Do you know a workaround, or would we have to wait until Meta would give us access to the camera feed?
I have one recommendation, is that you could use a Lynx headset to do it, because they'll give you full control over whatever you want to do with your headset.
Pardon, Ian, I lost the connection for a second.
He's recommending the Lynx headset. Unfortunately, Hugh cannot talk right now. We are already starting to talk about Lynx. I don't know. Maybe Hugh, you can join from phone instead of the PC. I think it may work. You can also close the camera. It may work. Maybe. I don't know if there's anyone joining from Lynx team other than you. But happy to invite them. We can only invite the people that we can recognize their names. So if anyone from the teams, please raise your hand or chat.
I see Stan's in the chat now. If you want to add
Stan,
him.
right? Okay, perfect. Yeah. Because I couldn't see him. Perfect, great. So this is the perfect actually opportunity right now to ask directly to Lynx team. Hello Stan, how are you? Since we have just talked at hackathon, I hope you also recover.
Yeah, thanks.
We were talking about the camera feed, but anything you would like to add there, that especially for those who have really direct interest to use the computer vision related maybe opportunities there?
Yes, we are So on Lynx, we have 6 cameras, including 2 pass-through high-resolution one, and we are actually, it's the #1 feature we're working on is a Android service that you will be able to tap into directly from Unity or Unreal that will give you access to 1 frame or 2 frames, from one or both cameras at the frame rate you want. If you need to do things like WebRTC, OpenCV, computer vision stuff, you would be able to tap into the cameras you need. And I'm pretty sure the #1 are the RGB one.
Perfect.
Oh, great.
One question, stereoscopic related question from Nico. I don't know if we can hear Nico right now, but his question was, Pico and Vive Elite doesn't have stereo view. How is the situation for Lynx? And what do you think about the importance of stereo view?
Well, I think we're doing pass-through in a pretty straightforward way that actually works very well, is by using the 2 cameras that are 64 millimeters apart from each other, which is the baseline for the average IPD of the human adult. So we don't need to do like the Pico or the Meta Quest Pro, like weird reprojection that actually introduce a lot of artifacts. And the way we're doing the geometric distortion is built in a way where you can actually trust the pass-through image. Because as a developer, you might be already used to the distortion on the Quest Pro or on Pico, but when you put that in the hands of the end user, they really see the artifacts, and it sends a message to them as, okay, this is almost the real world. This is the bad representation of the real world, and you should not trust the image because there is this wobbly artifacts around closed objects and all that. And we decided to use a more stereoscopic, in the old way, usage, and it tends to let people feel that our pass-through is better.
Okay. Thank you for this detailed answer. Any perspective from other devices who have already tried other devices? Okay, let's then continue. We have a couple of more questions. Yeah, there are lots of headset related questions that should I get a Vive XR Elite or others? So I will leave that to you based on the actual specs and the features that we are discussing right now. But there's one interesting question about the AR versus pass-through. I think this is really a UX, let's say, fundamental UX question. So let's say I have access to all the headsets on the planet right now, and I really want to build something mixed reality, okay? How should I decide if I'm using pass-through or see-through? For those who haven't heard of see-through, it's basically headsets like Magic Leap, HoloLens that you can actually see directly from the lens rather than camera feed. So how I would decide which type of through that I will use, see-through or pass-through? Any already existing use case or best practices that you have faced with, or is there any app or project that you have actually tried the same app, the same function on both see-through and pass-through, and then you have actually compared the results? I would love to hear more about that. This is probably one of the most key parts of this session today. Anyone who would like to start?
I can start. I would typically use like optical see-through AR headsets for something that's more real world focused, where it matters a lot more what your surroundings are and you can very clearly see. And there's a lot of like industrial usages of that where, you know, if you're in a workspace or something, like you want that optical like reliability. I like what Stan was saying about using stereoscopic that view. Like you need to be able to trust it. It needs to be super low latency and not have all these like artifacts and things. So we'll get closer to that, and hopefully that gap will close. Another thing is just having the blacks actually be opaque. If you need to use a lot of dark imagery in your content, maybe go for the mixed reality headset instead of like an optical pass-through, because the blacks are going to be transparent on pretty much all the headsets. And even with a little bit of dimming and stuff, it's still not the same experience that you'll get on mixed reality headset.
Okay. One additional question to that. Let's assume for 1 minute that all these lens or computer vision related, let's say, breakthroughs happen, that we can actually reach to a level of see-through in pass-through and vice versa. Of course, we will probably look at the form factor and everything, but I just want to understand, like, are we deciding only based on the current limitations of the hardware, or are you seeing any kind of other like limitations or criteria that affects your decision?
Does anyone else want to add?
Yeah.
So one thing I want to add is like another aspect is like the capability for the user to transition between VR and AR, because there are modes that, say, for example, I'm building something using an architecture app, and at some point I want a fully VR or virtual environment to do the prototyping, and at some point I want to preview it with the pass-through. And with something that allows the user to transition between these modes, the experience is totally different than just doing that in fully like AR mode. So that's another kind of experience-wise consideration that we may think about. So to my opinion, it all depends on what's your ultimate goal and what kind of median or what kind of mixture of this virtual and reality makes more sense to the user.
Anyone who would like to add, or who have tried both pass-through, see-through for the same type of project use case?
Yeah.
Sorry, Ian.
No, Billy, go for
Go
it.
ahead. Okay, I guess I just want to add that there's also certain usability issue related to peripheral vision. So for AR glasses, they tend to have like open peripheral vision, but for VR headset, depending on which one you're buying, some of them only like it's like all blocked. So it does affect the level of immersion that you experience when you actually use apps on those devices. So in order, say, if the application, if the experience that you want to create can be adjusted into full immersion, potentially VR headset would be a better choice, because it also helps you to like block all the peripheral vision. And for AR glasses, there's no easy way to do that unless the manufacturer also ship an additional like kind of gasket for blocking the light.
So the biggest dilemma, right? The peripheral vision versus field of view, right? So I think maybe it's also based on the experience you mentioned. It can really change the decision there. Very nice feedback on that. By the way, Billy, Daisy, would you like to also share the research paper that you have created, that you have worked for months? Maybe you can share on the chat. We will also share on our Discord server for those who would like to see the resources and your links. So happy to also share these links afterwards. So there are several questions regarding the POC part. They are asking, will you be releasing pass-through POC code somewhere in a repo? Are there any demo scenes that you recommend? I mean, the world beyond, yes, we know, but anything that you recommend that people can already, after this session, get excited and start already a little bit checking how does it look like on Unity or Unreal? The world beyond is, as far as I know, is already available, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I think in the Oculus as the sample package, I think they have some kind of master sample that contain every single pass-through samples in that package. So if you click into that scene, you can basically check out, I think, 5 to 6 different pass-through examples at once. I highly recommend that one, because it kind of also help you to, like, you can also learn about how to switch on and off different pass-through interaction in that example as well. And I think also in the liminal toolkit that we created, we actually published that on GitHub as well. You can also check it out.
Perfect. Let's share this in our pass-through channel in the Discord server, and we can add more links there whenever we have more resources. It's quite new, right? We are probably one of the few first events that we are actually covering pass-through. So we hope that the resources will increase. So let's a little bit talk about the toolkits, right? So does Unity's XR toolkit have pass-through, or do we need to use OVR to make use of pass-through? Another person asked, are you using Oculus SDK, not OpenXR? So who would like to answer this question, Billy or Ian?
Maybe I can go first. I think the two is reaching feature parity, but to my understanding for now, the only major limitation of the OpenXR one is the lack of hand tracking support, native hand tracking support out of the box. But other than that, I think the OpenXR, it's basically almost the same as OVR right now. So and also moving forward, I think Meta is going to encourage everyone to just use OpenXR according to their documentation. So if you don't need any kind of high quality hand tracking support right now, I would recommend just do OpenXR.
Okay, great. So I'm quickly continuing because we have a couple of more questions. In terms of streaming pass-through from Quest 2 Pro to PC, Alessio asked this question, but I would like to answer, maybe one of you, if you can answer on the chat, it will be great with the link and everything. So I will make it done. There is a few interesting questions, especially WebXR related. Ingmar asked, what about the WebXR and pass-through? Can you share some experiences? Actually, there is spatial fusion, right? Maybe some of you already tried. What is your thought about that? Are we seeing in the near future, or shall we aim for a little bit long-term future about WebXR and pass-through together? And why WebXR, right? If I'm already using Quest Pro or Quest 2, 3, do you think that WebXR will actually ramp up in the current scheme? Or, of course, we don't know the Apple devices, maybe it can help, but at least when you look at from the current landscape of platforms.
Yeah, this is an area I'm super interested in. WebXR, I think, is going to grow quite a lot in the future. One of the more recent projects that I've seen that's interesting in the space that does use pass-through and WebXR is the Needle engine. You can build with Unity and then export out as WebXR, web pages, and view it directly in your Quest Pro or whatever device supports it, and get your pass-through there. So that's already available now.
Perfect. I think the link is shared, or can you share again this link, because this is very interesting. Our team is also creating a full list of these links. We will probably post it on Discord, so feel free to also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Okay, so let's quickly continue. Okay, there are some slide-related questions. How much impact does pass-through camera resolution have on the mixed reality experience? Meta went with lower resolution. In your opinion, is resolution the most important aspect or not? Tyler asked.
I think Stan should answer that.
Exactly. Human eye resolution. How much we need human eye resolution?
You need a 60 pixel per degree at the retina level. So the retina is between 3 and 5 degrees of your central field of view, which is depending on your gender, age, a lot of things. But we would need between 50 and 60 pixels per degree. The interesting thing is you don't, the more angle you have, the less resolution and color acuity the eye is getting. So you just need to pack the insane resolution where you are looking. So eye tracking and high resolution display will play a huge role in the next wave of devices, as far as I'm concerned.
One more question regarding that. Do you have any information for the use of Lynx headset in moving environments like cars or trains? Can the tracking handle it, or can you use external tracking methods like OptiTrack with it? I mean, yeah, go ahead.
You can use OptiTrack. We created a plugin for OptiTrack where you can just plug a OptiTrack sensor in our USB-C to be compatible with current installation. You can use Vuforia. You can use our inside-out tracking. You can use any other tracking you would want, because you can get the frames of the cameras and the IMU. So if you want to do your stuff, you can do it. And we are, in April, we are doing parabolic flights because we want to put the headset in the space station. So it's going to be, battle tested.
Great. One question. Up to now, we have seen a few examples, in-car entertainment examples with VR, right? So are you expecting a little bit of like pass-through there? I'm asking to Stan or anyone who'd like to chime in. So are we expecting fully immersive in this moving vehicles, or?
I think there's a couple challenges there, and it's kind of like tracking the inside of the vehicle as well as the outside world. There's a new company that I just saw called HoloRide that basically using the Vive or the HTC headsets and creating a little base station to do the tracking of the car. And I thought that was kind of an interesting concept. I feel like it could probably work with a lot of other headsets as well, and probably a lot cheaper than an OptiTrack or some other system.
Great. Any other comment on that? Perfect. So let me go through the other question. How much pass-through affects performance? We know that, for example, in Quest headsets, whenever the Hands 2.0 tracking arrives, they had to drop the CPU and GPU max limit 1 each. So rendering optimization is very important for our trainers and students as well. We have actually classes about that. So this is actually a very important part. Like, okay, we are using pass-through. Maybe it's a luxury for us, and we are really risking the exact experience, user experience. So what's your take on that? And can you say something about MRTK and how Quest pass-through relates to HoloLens 2 pass-through? I think see-through our question. The question is probably referring to. So who would like to answer the performance and MRTK related question?
I could, but if somebody else wants to, they can. I don't want to hog it.
Go ahead, go ahead. We have quite limited time, so let's try to answer as much as we can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the higher the resolution is for our pass-through, the more bandwidth it's going to cost just internally on the headset, transferring images back and forth. And then especially because you're also using all those SLAM cameras and everything else. And then you add on hand tracking and other stuff. So it's just like piling on compute. So like there is some upside to having a low res pass-through. It doesn't look as good, but yeah, it doesn't cost as much. I think that Lynx and probably other companies are looking at how to improve this as well and get that full image as well without that compute hit. But I think it's going to probably happen with like more custom silicon and SoCs and stuff.
Perfect. Any other comments? Okay. So we have a couple of questions left. With all the new devices that have either recently been released or expected to be released soon, which hardware do you recommend as a good investment for mixed reality developers during the first half of 2023? Stan, what is your suggestion? We cannot hear you.
I said links, no question.
Exactly.
No, it's yeah, we are ramping up deliveries. It's coming up. But I think it's a good, very, very good device to get started on mixed reality, not just pass-through, but VR, AR, everything in between. That's something I can claim. Yeah.
Is it something that I can second? After looking at like part of the the question that came up earlier about different like considerations on which headset do you pick up and what's going to enable me to be able to like do the development that I want. And yeah, they're like part of, for me, the power of extended reality that's always been really powerful is the ability to give context to the information that people need every day. So if like my job is I'm wiring up a piece of machinery and I'm usually working off of a book over here that is the wiring diagram, the powerful use case for extended reality is to be able to take this information and overlay it in the context where I need it. So that kind of leads you down the thoughts of like, well, so do I need to create something that's going to be more immersive for like maybe more of an entertainment experience, or do I need something that's more focused on the world, like an augmented reality experience? And for a long time, augmented reality headsets were not within my price range, like $2.5 grand for like a HoloLens, and like Magic Leap as well is quite expensive and can be hard to even just get a hold of one of those devices. And so with like getting pass-through abilities on Quest when it first came out was like super appealing, because now you could start doing stuff that's closer to augmented reality work on a headset that only costs you as much as like a game console. And so that was a huge move, but there's still always these trade-offs and limitations. Like, if the hardware is going to support open standards like OpenXR, or if I have to use their specific SDK in order to do that work. And then also we still run into limitations, like we're talking about, how can I do my own work on top of the pass-through cameras, and certain manufacturers like Meta, for instance, for whatever reason, they've decided that they don't want to give you that access to the hardware, to the headset that you own. In that regard, like part of why I'm really excited about the Lynx headset personally, especially after trying it for the first time at Reality Hack, is that it really hits the sweet spot between all these different things. It lets you do immersive content, it lets you do pass-through content, it comes in at the right price point, and it gives you full access to do whatever you want. And so again, like it's the access issue, being able to get your hands on the hardware. But now that production's rolling, like I would keep your eye out and try to get a hold of one of those.
Thank you for this perspective. I have a few more questions I'm really curious about, so I will ask very quickly. Are you aware of any news about auto spatial mapping for Quest Pro? Any release date, update, or for Lynx as well? I will also ask the similar question, but from a procedural generated environment. So how the next generation of spatial mapping and procedure generated environments look like for us in 2023 or beyond? Chris, you have probably witnessed the future before anyone else. So would you like to a little bit, at least inspire us? What should we expect?
I'm not sure I can say, but I would expect something in the future.
Okay.
What time?
Okay. How about you, Stan? Anything you would like to say about autospatial mapping?
Yeah, it's something that will be added when we land the compatibility, probably by the end of February, with Snapdragon Spaces. That's one of the features that they're working on for headsets like mine. But except from Snapdragon Spaces, it's on our roadmap, but yeah, it's not very high compared to other features.
Okay, it's not prioritized yet. One more question. It's completely different, but still related with links. Up to how many anchors you can add per scene that will still make the headset not like overheat? So is there any limits there?
I have no idea, to be honest. We haven't benchmarked this. We benchmark a lot of stuff. You were mentioning pass-through, power consumption. We know how much watts it adds to the power to the device. You know what are the limitations for our ecosystem there. But for the anchors, I have no idea yet. Sorry.
Are you having any plans in terms of object tracking or?
Yes, with things like Vuforia and third-party tracking, we are developing a lot of drivers for integration with existing stuff. Yeah.
Are you planning more on the cloud side, these kind of things, so you don't so much consume the power, or will it be on the headset mostly?
It will be a bit of both. You can really choose from there, depending on your use case and the complexity of your scene or the models you're tracking. And it all depends on the strategy you're using, but you can do both. And it's the cool thing about links is that for most things you can choose. You want AR or VR, you can choose. It's versatile. I think versatility is the key point for links. You can do everything, so you can choose from there what you.
Perfect. Any other perspective from other headsets? Have you tried 10, 15 anchors at one scene?
Yeah, I've tried to basically my daughter took the headset on a shared spatial anchor project and just started drawing with spatial anchors. So I don't know, like a couple hundred. Like it wasn't.
Was it still
I don't
working?
think it's really I don't know what kind of behind the scenes optimizations there are, but I imagine there's something that's like, if it's within a certain boundary, it's gonna do a little lumping together or something.
Okay. Also Roger with us. I don't know if he can hear us, but if anything you would like to add, Roger, before we wrap up today, let us know. Feel free to chime in. In the meantime, I will also ask one more question. Can the selectable option allowing headset pass-through to be displayed on the PC through Oculus Air Link and integrate the pass-through to Unity? So I think this was a question for Billy while he's showing. Can we use Oculus Air Link to integrate pass-through to Unity, or?
I personally haven't tried the PC VR version of Passthrough, but from what I learned from the internet, I think you can indeed build PC VR app that uses Passthrough, but Unity wouldn't be able to access any of the Passthrough data.
Any other?
Yeah. Just to echo it, so basically it becomes a Rift app at that point, and you lose a lot of features. So hopefully they fix that. It's like kind of a bummer.
Yeah. Perfect. So we have to wrap up now, but any last like final advice or key, maybe direction that for developers joining us today, especially they would like to maybe a little bit go deep in the pass-through this year. What would be your final advice, or what would be the potential smart way of starting to explore? Who would like to start? Ian?
If you
yeah, go ahead.
if you have a Quest headset, because it's one of the most popular headsets available, I would open up Unity and either clone some of the samples and start poking around in there, or follow. There's plenty of great pass-through tutorials online from people like Dilmer Veselros or Valem that can show you how to get set up. The more you learn how to work with this technology, the more you're going to position yourself in a great spot to be working on like the future of immersive technology. And in my opinion, the best way to learn is just dive right in. And you could do that with classes at XR Bootcamp too.
People asking which headset the skeleton is wearing behind you. Is it
That-
HTC Vive?
That's a Quest Pro.
HTC, it's not HTC Elite. Okay.
No, they didn't let me take one of those home. I would have, but no.
Okay. Any other final advice or direction? We will continue with the open day, so you can ask any question about XR Bootcamp, as Ian mentioned. But first, let's have the final comments from our speakers and experts. Chris, anything, how we can prepare ourselves for the future of pass-through collocation?
Yeah, I think exactly what Ian said. Just, you know, crack open Unity, grab whatever headset you have with it, whatever features. I'd also really love to see people start to do more with eye tracking. There's really not a lot of crazy examples out there, and I've been using eye tracking for a really long time, and I just feel like publicly what I've seen out there is like barely scratching the surface. So if you wanted to dive into that, it's really awesome. And I think the Lynx has it as well, right? Like it also has eye tracking. So that's just a new thing that I just haven't seen a lot of.
Exactly. We have the first pro lecture was actually about eye tracking with Toby. I strongly recommend that you also check it out, because there are a lot of UX and different use cases that you can utilize eye tracking for.
Especially with pass-through, like you get a 3D point in space of where your eyes are looking, and you can do a lot with that.
Exactly. Like you can even almost designate. I'm thinking of how then we can recognize eye contact between two headsets. I think this would be very interesting to recognize. I mean, of course, we can recognize as a end user, but what if we, as the game app producer, that recognize this eye contact and then create some kind of like a gameplay mechanic around this? I think it might be quite actually interesting, or trigger, you know, so this might be really interesting. This is the aha moment that you remember when you high five on Workroom. I think it will be a similar effect as well. Anything, Billy, Casey, that you would like to add?
From my part, like speaking from designer's perspective, I would say, although we've talked about a lot of limitation of the current hardware, I think it's still worthwhile to just kind of dream wild in terms of what kind of pass-through you are looking for. And probably one day you will find the hardware that can help you achieve that vision.
Great. How about you, Billy?
I personally would love to see maybe two areas. One for perhaps productivity apps. I think more social or collaboration experience using pass-through would be quite interesting. Imagine like different home offices are joined together to form like a shared office that enable people to work from home without losing like the human connection to other colleagues. And for games, perhaps I would love to see more games that utilize pass-through as a plot device, like not using it just for like as a background or playground, but more like the pass-through environment is actually the core part of the gameplay. That would be also quite interesting to me. You're on mute.
Thank you for all your nice feedback and advice. We will continue with the info session in another Zoom link. I also shared this with you in case you are interested to explore all these pass-through and actually XR development either from scratch or intermediate or advanced level. We are happy to answer any of your questions. In the last cohorts last year, we have maybe over 120 projects created by students. And I have seen like at least 20% where actually they are trying pass-through for their own use cases. This gives me a lot of hope about like the future that we will maybe build with pass-through collocation. So we would love to continue prototyping on that. Just a small, maybe, how could I say, tease from today. We are planning a prototyping bootcamp with really leading companies like Lockheed Martin, Pearson, Meta, links that we will create pass-through focused prototyping bootcamp that we will create sprints and do always like pass-through and collocation related experiences together in a supervised format. So you can build your portfolio or you can quickly level up on this new paradigm of UX paradigm of XR. We are planning for this summer. So in case you are interested, please feel free to reach me on LinkedIn or Discord. My name is also written on the Discord as well. You can reach us anytime. We will announce this soon, but I'd like to share this with you first before anyone else. So if you're interested in this invite-only pass-through focused bootcamp and prototyping sprint, let us know. We would love to see you there as well. So all these discussions actually turn into something concrete, tangible together. So thanks for joining today. I hope that we will see each other in the next XR Pro lecture. And thanks to Links, Meta, and other experts, Daisy, Billy, for this nice speech. We would love to see you in the next XR Pro Open Lecture 3 on February 1st. So till that time, hope we can see you on Discord and see you soon. Thanks, everyone. Our info session also linked there. Feel free to use this link to start the session there. Let me link again. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Have a very nice day and see you on 1st of February.